All right, so today we're going to talk about something that some people have considered, which is putting in a basement apartment or a side apartment in your house with a bedroom and a bathroom or something you can rent out on Airbnb or even just have a tenant in, depending what you're trying to do. Today we're sitting in my basement apartment at my house, and I'm going to kind of show you the different things to consider as far as what really you need to do with this to, we'll go through the pros and cons and different things you really want to look at to see is it worth doing for you, what you should try to mitigate if you're going to do it, and really just making it to where it's a great experience for everybody when done correctly. All right, so as I mentioned before, we're looking really today at kind of the pros and cons and different ways to go about this. So first, let's talk over some of the major concerns that people have, and these come up all of the time. So to start, safety, right? It's a part of your house. It feels like somebody's in your space. And so we're going to I'll go over some different ways of kind of mitigating that and really making it feel as safe as possible to where you don't have to be too concerned. Second is noise. Noise is a big thing too. It's your space. You don't want to be hearing people all the time. You don't want to be having to deal with just other people are loud. There's no other way to put it. And so you don't want to have that be your issue to deal with in your property. And so we're going to talk over some different ways to go through that. And then, just kind of some general concerns. But really, at the end of the day, it's not difficult to do. But there are certain things we're just trying to make sure that this is the best outcome you can have without it being something that you regret doing later, and really just make it an overall good experience. So let's talk about deadening sound, because that is a big piece of this, and noise is a big part of what makes things uncomfortable if you're in your own living space. So realistically, and what we're in right now, is we are underneath the main floor of my house. So I live upstairs, and we're down here in the basement. And sound travel can be difficult to get rid of, but there's a couple different ways that we go about this. The first, and this is the simplest for most homes, if you have a main floor and you're doing your basement, what's under my feet? Carpet. Carpet's one of the easiest ways to get rid of sound travel. The pad and the carpet itself gets rid of a lot versus hardwood surfaces. Now, I get that everybody likes hardwood or laminate or vinyl or any of those, but if you're looking at true just noise comfort, this is one of the easiest options to put in. It doesn't involve ripping out a lot. It can usually just be laid on top of whatever you have, and that can be pretty simple. So then other things that we have to talk about then is, and this one's a little pricier and a bit different, but if we're looking at where sound likes to go, if you don't have sound coming through the floor, you are going to have it coming through your ducting. So, if you notice, if you could look around this room, which I know it's hard to do on video here, but we don't have any actual vents anywhere in this room. Everything's covered up. Under here, there's ducts, but there's no vents coming out into this room. What we specifically did here is we put in these. This is called a mini split heat pump. So a mini split, basically, it's an air conditioner and a heater, and there's no ducting tied to this. So this basement right now has a fully independent air system that, again, this is a pricier thing to do, but if you're looking at a long-term property that you're staying in, which this is my long-term home, we don't want to have all this extra work done that we're going to be doing and then have the sound still bouncing through the ducts and the voices coming through, especially because my bedroom is on the main floor here. So we just don't want to have that issue of that sound coming through. You don't want to hear them having sex. They don't want to hear you having sex. It's pretty simple. Just simple things like that, where if you want to really make it comfortable for yourself in the long term, these can go a long way for that purpose. One of the better pieces that you can do, and this comes more with construction, this is not going to be a simple thing to just add, but is how much drywall and other sound deadening are you going to have in the ceiling of the unit down below. So a lot of noise can either be mitigated from the top or below. Up top, you got to change flooring. Down here, it involves extra thickness and density. So what we actually have in here is you have joists that run down through the house. We have fiberglass shoved up in there. You can use other things called rock wool or other types of insulation. Each has their pros and cons, but you have insulation between the joists. And what we actually have in here, and I'll show you a little diagram here on the side, is that there's what's called resilient channel. So it's like a metal strip that runs perpendicular to the joists. Then we have a sheet of 5/8 drywall, which a standard sheet is a 1/2 inch, but we have 5/8. But then we have a glue and another sheet of 5/8. So a normal setup would just be a single sheet of 1/2 inch drywall. We actually have more than double that just in drywall, plus some extra glue and some other things. And so what that means, if we're actually listening here, and it might be hard to hear this on the camera or on the microphone, is this is the section that's least insulated because of the ducting, just the way it was designed, and we can't do much about it. But if you hear that, it sounds a little hollow. If you hear here, again, might be hard to hear on video, but this sounds like a solid rock. this sounds hollow. And that's the difference, is this still is 5/8 over here, but this is the double 5/8 with all the extra. And so it makes a major difference to where in the time we've lived here with this basement running, we've only heard voices once, and that was a drunk family after a wedding. And so it does make a big difference to where we don't really hear those voices coming through, which is the biggest piece as far as sound contamination between two spaces that you want to deal with. Another piece is how you separate the space in terms of the actual door. So generally with any of these, you want to have a door between the two so it's a single family home. You don't want to drywall it off because then you're going to have issues with loans and selling later. So you just want to avoid that. But with this door, because you have to have it in most cases, is you want this door to actually insulate some sound too. So you don't want your cheesy hollow core door or anything that just really doesn't block anything. And we all know exactly what hollow core doors I'm talking about. The type you could, in college, you would fall through and there would just be a hole in it because it was so flimsy. So we have a solid core door here that really helps with that sound. This is where the door actually trims up against and like smacks into here to hold it closed. Now, this part we need to seal a little better just because I can smell them cooking breakfast. So if they're making bacon, I know they're cooking bacon. And it's actually not coming up through the rest of the house. It's coming up through my stairway up to upstairs. So we're going to put a different seal here with rubber, and we're going to do a similar thing on the bottom so that when this door is closed, it's air sealed so that we're not getting smells, we're just not getting noises coming through. Because any voices we've heard, occasionally they come through the ceiling, which is very rare. Most of the time we actually hear it more coming up through the stairwell. So adding some rubber seals on that door between to where sound and air is completely insulated, because air is what sound travels through, makes the biggest difference. This is something we've also learned as the time we've had this, is doors closing. So because we have solid core doors everywhere here, they're loud. If you can't tell, it's a chunky, loud noise. And so and that's me just very casually closing this door. So what we've had to do, because that was something that, as much sound mitigation as you do, that vibrates through the whole frame of the house. Going into the bedroom here, we've done something very simple, and all it cost me is a few bucks, is these little buttons. So these are just those little foam cushions you can put on the bottom of chairs, you can do them whatever. They were a few bucks at Walmart. We just stick them on here. Now, same door, listen to the difference. Much better. So this isn't waking me up at midnight anymore just from somebody closing a door casually because they just want to have privacy in their bedroom. So that alone is one of my favorite things we've added, and it was by far one of the cheapest things we could have done to really mitigate the sound. One thing, as I was mentioning earlier, is not every house is well set up for this, is a shared entrance. If it's just like a stairway that goes to two separate doors like a duplex, that might be okay. Again, not preferred, but that could work. What you really want to avoid, and this may work for you while you live there, but if you ever move or you have other issues, is you don't want people having to walk through somebody else's space to get to where they need to go. So if you have one of those staircases that's just dead center in the house and you have to go through the kitchen and the living room to get there, I'm sorry, but just don't do it. Unless it's just close friends that are staying there and you're not putting a lot of money into this, fine. But for the most case, you want privacy, you want separation. So don't do those things because it's not going to be worth the investment you're putting into it. You figure you need a kitchen, but not always. So realistically, with all of these spaces, it really comes down to who you're catering to. So are you looking to have a long-term tenant, just somebody who lives down here all year, and they're going to need it to be a full living space? Is it going to be something where it's just somebody into town for the weekend? They don't really need a full kitchen, they just might need some basics like a microwave and a mini fridge. That really is a big part to think about in this because these aren't cheap to put in, but you have to really think about who it's catered to. If you don't have a full kitchen and the type of people who are coming are going to stay for up to a week or more, they're probably not going to book your spot if they don't have access to a kitchen, which where we are, most of our guests, because we do short term a lot of the time, is they're staying for 4 to 15, 20 nights. And so they want to have the access to the kitchen. Do they use it all the time? No. But there are times where they want to cook something or they want to just have something extra. So you really want to be sure that you know who you're catering to. If you're at a spot where people are just in the town for a weekend and they want to go to bars and just go out, you don't really need to have that. You just need to have a microwave, some snacks, basics. For our sake, full kitchen's what's needed, and it's totally worth it. The sink is one of the big things to consider in this. So we do have a full-size sink here. The city we live in allows us to have this. Sometimes when you're putting in what we'll call a kitchenette, some cities are weird about it, and just depends. You have to check with where you live and find out. Some won't let you have a full-size sink. They're only going to let you have like the little mini bar sinks or other things like that. You just need to kind of find out. Whether you want to permit this or not, that's up to you. Obviously, I'm supposed to say you should permit everything, but that's up to your risk and what you want to deal with the city. A lot of places that have been built out like this or have had additions done, if you really look it up, most haven't been permitted. So it really is up to you. We fully permitted ours, so everything we have here is technically allowed, but really keep that up to you. But full-size sink, again, might not always be allowed. It just depends. The other big issue that's going to come up, and this is even more than the sink, is going to be the stove. So the two main things that are going to cause you problems with a basement apartment or a separate apartment or anything are the two things that we mentioned now, which is stove and separate door. It's going to be those two pieces. If you don't have the separate door, it's going to cause you issues. If you have a stove, it's the opposite. That may cause you problems too. So a lot of places may consider, if you have that secondary stove, that this is a separate apartment, which they may not legally allow. So with that, you have to look again at your local laws and find all that out. And so the way some people get around this is, again, not everybody uses the stove. I bet you, if I open this, you can barely tell this has been used. And we've had 20-something people stay here over time now so far. And so realistically, it's not a high-used item, but the stovetop is. People are making breakfast. They're doing things like that. So really, a stovetop and a microwave are the main things you want. Microwave you can have anywhere. That's not really going to be a law that a city's going to have. The stovetop, you can do a portable 2-burner stovetop that plugs in. So if really you want to supply those things, you can do that. And you can also get fancy microwaves now called convection microwaves that can function as an oven. So if you need to balance it out, you don't need to have a full-size stove. You can do it that way and actually have both without truly going against the laws that are in your area if you want to keep everything fully legal. Talking about privacy, there's a lot of things that come with that in terms of who needs to use what. And so you really want to be sure that if you have, in this case, a basement apartment, that they have access to all the things they need. And so the easiest way to get around this is by making sure that everybody just has their own individual version of that. And one of the biggest pieces, and it does not matter whether you have a long-term or a short-term tenant, is going to be this room right here, which is my favorite little hidden gem, the laundry. So with laundry, you're really looking at just, everybody needs to clean sheets. They need to clean their clothes. If you have short-term tenants, people will say, oh, we don't really need the separate laundry. We're doing an Airbnb or a VRBO. But with those, you still have the issue that you have a cleaner who's going to need to come swap sheets out, swap towels out, do all those things. Do you want to every week take it all, put it in your laundry, wash it, put it back for them to be able to fold and do everything with? Sure, some of you might say yes to that. For this, I just didn't want it to be something that took a lot of my time. The whole point was this is supposed to make our lives a bit easier, reduce some of our cost of living, and the cleaners are fine with doing that. They get paid to do it. So the more hours you can give them, actually, the happier they are, and mine would say the same. So with this, having the laundry is one of the biggest pieces. And it's actually not an issue in most municipalities or cities or towns, whatever you want to call them. It really is something that you can just put in. I have the full setup here with the dryer vent and all of that, and everything's contained down here. So when they need to do laundry, they have it. So if I have a long-term tenant eventually, which we may do down the road, there's no problem. They can have laundry. This is a fully independent apartment. So it's really up to them what they want to do. But for now, when our cleaner comes, she doesn't have to come upstairs. She doesn't have to give us laundry. She can just come in here, throw it in, do it, take care of everything down here without coming into our space, to where half the time we don't even know it's being turned over, which is a good thing. Seating. This is going to seem ridiculous, and they're like, oh, of course, that's obvious, but you'd be amazed how often you miss it, or other people that are designing units like this miss it, is how many people do you plan on staying down here? And this is especially specific to short-term rentals, is we have sleeping space for 4 down here. We have a queen bed, and we have a queen pull-out on the couch as well. So that means we need to have space for 4 people to sit, and that means both in the kitchen to eat and over in the living room. Look, we have 4 chairs. We have 4 people's worth of seating. And, most of the time you could do it with a standard table. With ours, we had to be a little flexible with it. You can actually move. There's trash cans under here. You could put the 2 chairs over here and have 4 people sit at the same space here. But if you want to see bad reviews on your unit, if you're doing short term, put less seating than people that are there. You're going to get bad reviews for it. I've seen it happen. So, looking into the living room. Look, we have actually 5 to 6 people's worth of seating over here. But really you need the 4 for our case. In another unit I'm working on right now, we have 6 people worth of beds. And so we have what seems like a big couch in that space for the space itself. It fits fine. Everything looks fine. It just looks really big, but it's because we needed 6 people worth of seating. So really make sure you're covering the amount of people you have so they can all sit and hang out, because they're going to play games. They're just going to hang out. They may even have a friend or 2 come over, because people do that when they're on vacation, especially if you're doing the short term. So make sure you have that covered and go there. A final point, make sure your furniture is easy to clean. Guess what? White is a terrible color to use for cleaning. I'm pretty sure most of you know that. It might look great in pictures. You have your nice crisp white couch and you have your colors and all the other stuff. Please do something that's really easy to clean. So make sure you have really nice materials that you can wipe down easily. This couch almost feels like denim. And so with that, it makes it just really easy to wipe down, clean. You can just scrub it down. It's something that's robust. And the same comes in the kitchen. Look at our kitchen chairs here. Kind of looks like leather, but it's just a nice vinyl. These were cheap. They're the most comfortable bar stools. So if you ever see a bar stool like this, just buy it. You won't regret it. But these wipe down. They're super easy to clean. We don't have to worry about it. And they're cheap enough, too, that if there ever was an issue, we could replace them. But it makes a massive difference where we're not dealing with stains. We're not dealing with a lot of things like that, to where it's an easy-to-maintain unit over the long term for whatever type of rental we're doing. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of what things to consider when building out an apartment, whether you should. If you do have any questions on any of this, feel free to let me know. All the information you need is below to find me. But it's something that has made a big difference for our life. For a lot of the clients I've worked with, it's helped out as well, where it pays most, if not all, of your mortgage if you set it up right. And that makes a big, big difference financially for you. And so, yes, are there some cons to it? Can you hear noises occasionally? Yes. But 90+% of the time, we don't really have an issue. The safety part, as far as having other strangers in our house, yeah, we had that consideration for the first couple weeks. And guess what? There wasn't a problem. So with that, it's really just something that you kind of have to look at your comfort. But we've gotten to the point now where we just really care if they like it. That's what we're really thinking about. It's just like, oh, did they leave a good review because they liked it? And if somebody gives us bad feedback, we don't take it as like, oh, that's a problem. It's like, oh, that's something to fix, or can we fix it? Sometimes the answer is no. But, if you put some good thought into this and really set it up well, it's something that for the most part will be a benefit. And it's not going to be as much work as everybody else tries to make it out to be if set up correctly. If you do the work up front, later it's going to be a lot easier. So hopefully that's all helpful to you. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you later.